What's going on, everybody? In today's video, we are going to be talking about Thunkable, which is a no-code tool for building all kinds of apps. Now, this tool works slightly differently than tools like Bubble or Appgyver that I covered in some of the previous videos. But nevertheless, this is a very interesting tool. And so in the first part of the video, we are going to be discussing how this tool works, the functionality, the UI, the methodology, the kind of thinking you need in order to develop the app. And in the second part of the video, we are going to be actually going ahead and building a very simple app in order to give you a general idea of how you can actually go about building a very quick app. And so here I am on the home page. This is Thunkable, realize your app idea, no code, one project, 3 cross-platform apps, no coding. And so they have a nice landing page here, every platform natively, native Android devices, native iOS devices, mobile web, drag and drop blocks, easy animations, start from scratch or remix. You have a gallery, basically other apps that have been built by community members that you can start and you can build on top of that. A community of creators, etc. So let's go ahead and let's jump in and let's look at the UI and the general thinking of this very exciting and interesting tool. So here I am logged in into my free account, and here I can start building my custom app. And if you scroll towards the bottom, there's all kinds of these sample apps that you can look at, you can view, you can see how they were built. But we're going to be doing that a little bit later. For now, we're going to be going out and building our own sample app. So I'm going to start building. I'm going to call this new app, no category. And we are going to try out their new drag and drop interface, which is actually very nice. So I'm going to hit create. The new app has been created. It also has been loaded. And let's talk about the UI here, okay, so that you understand exactly where is what. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is we have our new app here. And we also have 2 tabs. We have the design tab and we have the blocks tab. The design tab is for the designing the app. If you've used Bubble, you have the design tab there, and you also have the workflows. This is kind of similar, but it works slightly different, but it's very close to that kind of thinking. And so in the design tab, you have various components. You have the screens. Here you can add more screens. You can zoom in and zoom out. You can focus. And then you have different properties for that component, for the element that you're currently working with. So for instance, I can drag a label here, just simply drag and drop, and I have a label. Now I have my component hierarchy here. I also have the various properties of this component that I'm looking at. I can also arrange it. I can, maybe make it full width. I can make it smaller. I can center it. It's really nice because I have the rulers there, the guides that allow me to quickly and easily align things how I want them to do. And so I have the font style. I can define all that. Normal, text align. I can make it center. The text, I can change the text. I can make the font size a little bit bigger, maybe 22. All of these things you should be familiar with because it's very standard with a lot of these builders. I can also drag a button here, and I can also modify different things about the button, right? I also have a map component. Lots of interesting components here. I'm going to delete that. I can simply select it here and click delete. I can delete it right here. And I can also browse my hierarchy here. I have a web viewer, animation, different interesting, lots of interesting components here. I also have various sections here. So I have the designer here. I also have a data here, data sources, which we're going to get to in a little bit when I'm going to be building a sample app. We have various assets, media files, Figma files. We have settings for the app, right? Public app, auto increment version. We have version name for Android, for iOS, Firebase settings, lots of interesting things. And then you have various tutorials as well. You can also create multiple screens. So just like with any kind of app, whether it's mobile or a web app, you have multiple screens, multiple pages. You can do that by clicking this button. So if I click it, I have a new screen now, and I have a new screen here. And I can also call it whatever I want. I can click here, I can rename it, or I can delete it. And this is something we're also going to be making use of when we're going to be building a sample app just a little bit later in the video. Now, I want to bring your attention to blocks. Okay, blocks is very, very important because that is the logic of the app, right? On one hand, you have the design, how everything looks, the fonts, the justification, center, left, right, justified. But in order for this app to actually function, you need the logic, right? Some people call it business logic. Some people call it code. It's all the same thing, and this is really the heart of the app. And so how does this work? Well, you have logic, you have core logic, right? And this is your basic, your logic that's independent of the actual components, right? So for instance, if I click on control, I have my if do else, if then else, wait 1 second, these basic control blocks that you're going to be using when you're going to be building the app. You have equals, less than, greater than, and, or, not true, a lot of these things. Then you have math, you have text, you have lists, and all of this is general stuff. It's not tied to any element, it's not tied to any component, which is something we're going to be talking about in a second. You also have color, you have devices. So is the device online? Is the screen platform is iOS? Is it Android? Is it web? Etc. etc. I actually just by clicking on it, I actually placed it on my screen, but we're not going to be using this, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. We also have variables, which we're going to be making use of in our tutorial a little bit later on. And then last but not least, we have functions. If then, do something and return, etc. etc. Next, we have so-called app features, right? Speech, sound, share, camera, sign-in, push notifications, alerts, timers, all of that thing. And we also have some advanced. We have web APIs, Bluetooth assistant. So it's very, very rich interface. There's lots and lots of things that you can do. But now I want to bring your attention to UI components, blocks for UI components. So remember, if we go back to the design, we have a label here. This is called a label 1. And we have a button 1. Now, whenever you want to do something with that, you want to interact with it, you're not going to be going through the core components. You're going to be going through the UI components. So if somebody clicks a button, if you want to read what's in the label, if you want to write, a new value to the label, right? So if I go to the design and I have new text, if you want to read this or you want to write to it, modify it, you will be doing something called a uComponents logic, okay? And so if I click on button 1, we have various logic already pre-configured and kind of templates. These are basic templates that we can drag and drop, and we can make the app do something. And so as an example, let me delete this. Let me click on this. We have here when button 1 is clicked, when button 1 is long click, when button 1 is touch down, touch up, all of these things are ready to go. So I already have the action here. I can do the same thing to the label. When label 1 is clicked, I can set various text. I can do all kinds of interesting things. So for instance, let's say we can also go to the screen 1. So the way you want to start the app always is you want to just choose something like this. You want to choose one of these. When screen 1 opens, so I'm going to drag this here. And what I want to do is I want to change the text of the label. So the first action is this. When screen 1 opens, I want to set the label to something else. So I'm going to drag this. I'm going to put it in here. When I do that, it has, as soon as I lock it in place, there's a little click. There's a little audible click that means that essentially you lock it into place, and now this is ready to go. As you can see, this code here is functional. There's no errors here. If you drag and drop something that doesn't make sense, so for instance, I drag this by itself, it doesn't mean anything. As you can see, it's kind of this faint color. It's not a solid color. It's kind of this faint light color. That means that this by itself is not doing anything. It's not valid expression. And so right now, what we have here, when screen 1, which is this screen, our only screen, opens, we want to set label text to label. So as you can see right now, it's actually new text. When we run this app, it's going to change it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to click on this web preview. So if I click on it, it automatically changes it to label. Okay, as soon as it loads, it changes it to label. So our first very, very simple app is functional. Okay, so I can also click here and I can do something like this, new text here. Okay, I can do that. I can run it. I hit that play button. And as soon as it loads, now it says new text here. So right away, you know this is working. It's doing exactly what we needed to do. And like I said, there's lots of functionality, right? I can also do button long click, right? So I can drag this here and I can copy this, right? Control C, Control V, and I can drag this here. And so now when I click on the button, it's going to change it as well. Not only when the screen opens, but when I click on the button, it's also going to change the text. So let's delete this one here and let's leave this one here. Let's play the app. So when I load the app, it's this old text. I'm going to hit the button. And now we have new text here. Now, it's worth mentioning that I don't actually click on the button. I hold it. That's the only way. So if I close this and I play this again, if I click it, nothing happens. But if I hold it down, it works. That is because our code says long click. I can click on it and I can change it to click. Now, if I play it, all I have to do is click on it and it changes it. Very, very simple. And that's really the beauty of these blocks. And that is how Thunkable works. Using these blocks, this code. You know, Bubble has its workflows. Appgyver has the code designer. I believe that's what they call it. But Thunkable has this block diagram. And in my opinion, this is really, really nice because you can do a lot of things here. For instance, I can go back to design and I can put in a new label. Okay, I can put in a new label here. Let's drag this below. And this is going to be label 2. You can rename it if you want, but for the purpose of this tutorial, these default names are absolutely fine. I'm going to go back to blocks. And I can actually, so what I can do is I can copy this, I can paste it, and I can drag it inside there, right? I can drag it. Just because you have one statement here before does not mean you can only have one statement. You can expand it as much as you want. You can make it as complex or as simple as you want. In fact, when you're going to be building more complex apps, you're going to have a lot of statements here, and that is absolutely fine. So this is really, really nice because if you look at the blocks here, if you go into the blocks tab, you can see using this block diagram exactly what's happening in your application. So what we're going to do is we're going to say label 2, text is label 2 goes here. Okay, so now when we click, we're going to modify both labels using different text, obviously. So now we have 2 labels here. I click on it, new text here, label 2 goes here. Very, very simple app. Now let's go ahead and make a slightly more complex app using some data sources and using multiple screens, just to give you an idea of how to build a more complex app. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And I'm going to go back to my design screen and I'm going to delete this as well. We don't need this. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to click this. We're going to delete it. I'm going to go in here. We're going to delete this as well. Just to do something, we're not going to delete the screen. We're going to delete the button. I'm going to add a new screen here. Screen 2 is fine. And what I want to do is, what I'm going to do is I am going to create a data source, okay? And so if you go in here to the add components, you can manually pick a component or you can search for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type data and we have a data viewer list. I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop it here. And this allows us to display various pieces of data. And so the first thing you need to do is you need to connect to a data source. We don't have any data sources, so I'm going to create a new data source. We can get data, we can have our own data source, we can get data from Airtable, or we can get data from Google Sheets. So just to keep this very, very simple, I'm going to create my own data source, and I'm going to call this DS, which stands for data source. I'm going to hit create, and now it's created. Next, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to select my existing data source, and we have a table there. So if I click on view data, I'm going to see my data here, right? I have a table 1, and it has 2 columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this column to name, and I'm going to rename this to profession. So the idea is I'm just going to have people's first name and their profession. So let's say we have Michael. I'm just going to name people John and Judy. And the profession, Michael's profession is police officer. Police officer. Let's put that correctly. John's profession is a firefighter. And Judy is a CEO, let's say. So we have 2 columns, name, profession. We have 3 records here. Okay, I'm going to close this. And now we need to configure this table here. Okay, very, very important. Now, if you click on here, you have various options. You can display it as like this, as simply the title, as one text field and a subtitle, some images. We're gonna choose this one here, title and subtitle, and then we're gonna configure. The title is gonna be the name, the subtitle is gonna be the profession. And once we do that, it's already previewing it for us. So that means that our data is set up correctly. You have a layout, you have all these things, that's fine. We can put it maybe somewhere here. We can even center it if you want. Something like this. And now we have a basic table that gets our data from our local storage. So if I play this app, that is what's going to happen. We're just displaying data. Nothing is happening. What I want to do in this simple app is I want to do something like where they click on a specific record. On the next screen, we are going to display the name of the user, the name of the record, the name of the person that was clicked. And this allows us to use all kinds of different functionality in the app just to show you how everything works together. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go into blocks. For the first screen, we want to respond to the click event. If somebody clicks on the specific row, we want to catch that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the data viewer right here, and we have various options. So when the data viewer lists one item click, right, we want to do something. So we're going to drag and drop this, and we're going to put it right here. We're going to have it here. Now it's listening for our item click events. So remember, you can customize this, right? You can say when the screen is clicked, when you have left swipe click, right swipe click, and we are going to be getting the row ID. This is a variable that's available to us. And what do we want to do? We want to save the row ID as a page variable because we need to understand what is the ID of the row that's being clicked. So we're going to go into variables. We're going to set app variable, the name of the variable to something. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to drag and drop this right there. And this says set app variable. This could be a stored, cloud, different kinds of variables. We are going to call this row ID. Okay, we're going to set this to our row ID. Drag and drop. And now our variable is set. So, if the variable, whatever the variable is of that first record, we're going to save it. Or whatever the variable is of the second record, we're going to save it. And now what we want to do is we want to redirect to the second screen and display the variable. And so what we want to do is we want to click on Control and we want to choose Navigate, and we're going to put it also in here. And we're going to say Navigate to screen 2. Okay, so what is happening here? If somebody clicks on our items inside the data viewer, we're going to get the row ID, and we're going to set it as an app variable called row ID. And then we're going to navigate to our screen 2. Since this is an app variable, it's available all over the app. It's not going to be just available on a specific screen, because if it was, that would defeat the purpose. In our case, this is going to be available across the entire app. Next, we're going to go to the second screen, and we're going to drag and drop. We're going to go back to design, and we're going to drag and drop a sample let's say a label. Okay, we have a screen here. We're going to center it, and we're going to drag and drop a label. And I'm going to rename it to say something, some kind of a statement, some kind of a response. You chose, we have it here, and then we're going to drag and drop another label. And this label is going to be filled with the actual name or profession or both, whatever we decide, of the item that we clicked in the previous screen. Okay, so I have this here. You chose. I'm going to also center justify it. I'm going to center it here. This is going to be centered as well. Kind of nice. You chose. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go into screen 2. And what we want is when screen 2 opens, we're going to drag and drop. Next, we're going to go to label 2 because we're working with label 2. We want to modify label 2. We're going to drag and drop this one right here. And now when screen 2 opens, we are going to set screen 2 text to label. Right now, it's just going to set it to a statically text label. So if I run this here, let's do that. Let's go to the first screen. I click on it, it saves it, but nothing happens because it's setting it to a static string, just something that's has nothing to do with our action, with the previous screen. So we're going to go back to our designer. We're going to go back to screen 2. And what we need to do is we need to pull up that app variable that we set on this screen, on the previous screen. So I'm going to go back to variables. We are going to pull up that variable. We're going to use this one right here, app variable. This reads it. And also, remember, guys, if you go here, if you go into variables, if you just hover over, it's going to tell you get variables value. This says change a variable's value. This set a variable to value. And this is initialize an app stored or cloud variable to value. Another thing that you should be paying attention to is you see the form of this. We need to replace this pink area. Okay, because it's being set to a static. And which one of these, in your opinion, is going to fit correctly? It's kind of a jigsaw puzzle, if you will. And the answer is only this one. So we need to drag this one here, and that's it. Now we are setting our label 2 to an app variable by the name of, what was that app variable? Row ID. So we're going to say row ID. That's it. Now, if we have to do more work, we can replace this thing with something else. But right now, it should be setting it to our row ID. But we don't want row ID, right? We do not want row ID. Let me show you what I mean. If we do row ID, we're going to get something completely random, right? So if we click this, this is our row ID. If we go in here, if we go back to our screen, we're going to set it to a different row ID, but we do not want row ID. We actually want the data. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to replace this app variable with something else. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to go into data sources, and we're going to get value from a data source for a specific row, and that is what we need. So we're going to drag and drop this. Now, once we dragged it, we have another value. So what we want to do is we want to set label 2, but we want to get the value, right? Get value from our data source. We only have one data source. Table 1, we're going for name in this example. You can also go by profession, but we need to get the row ID from the app. So we're going to go back to variables. We're going to drag and drop this right here, put it to here. We're going to call this row ID. We're going to enter row ID here. And now our code is complete. So when screen 2 opens, we're going to do something. We're going to do whatever is inside here. We're going to set the variable, but before we can set it, we need to get the row ID, and then we need to get the row ID from the app variable, and then we actually need to get the value. So let's run this together. Let's see if it's working. Let's close this. Let's go back to screen 1. Let's run it from the start. We have Michael, John, Judy. Let's click on Michael. And what do we have? You chose Michael. Let's try this again. Let's run it again. Let's pick Judy. You chose Judy, and that is exactly what it's doing. Now we can go to screen 2, and we can change it to profession. So we can do that. We can run it. And now the profession should show up on the second screen. We're going to click on Michael. You chose police officer. If I run it again, If I click on John, you chose firefighter. And as you can guess, if I run it again and I pick Judy, we should get CEO, which is exactly what we have here. And so this is an example of a very, very simple app that makes use of a lot of different functionality inside Thunkable, including the data blocks, the UI design, the data source, and all of these things. And this is kind of all that I wanted to show you guys in this video, just to get you started, just to get you thinking, because for some of you, or for many of you, this kind of design might take some time getting used to. For me, it comes natural because my background is in software engineering, and so I kind of like this design. It makes things very, very intuitive. But maybe for some of you, this is going to be, you might need some time to get used to it. Leave a comment below if you like this design or you don't like this design. And in some of the future videos, I'm going to be building a much more complex app. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it first and foremost. And also let me know what kind of app you want to see me go out and build, because you can do a lot of exciting things. You can do text-to-speech. You can do sound, share, camera, sign in, push notifications, data sources, alerts, timers, a lot of interesting things that is not supported by some of these other builders. And so I eagerly await your responses. Leave the comment below. Make sure to like this video if you are enjoying this content. That is very, very important for me and this channel. If you've gotten value from this content, definitely like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you like NoCode. This channel is exclusively about NoCode. That is all we talk about on this channel, how you can build the app of your dreams without writing a single line of code. And that is it for me. I really hope you've gotten value here. Don't forget to like this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts below or some requests for future videos. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video.